Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. So since we haven't recorded in a little while, there have been some new products that have come out over the last few weeks that we did just want to quickly touch on. So Aaron, do you want to just take us through each of those new products?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely been quite a while since we recorded, like 3 weeks. So thank you guys for sticking around. There has been quite a bit of movement on the card front. There is most notably Upper Deck Series 2, released on March 24th. We won't go into too much detail there, just because we are planning to cover it with a special guest in the near future and maybe even some live product. So we're just going to leave that alone right now. But there has been also Upper Deck Black Diamond released at the start of April. Overall, the cards do look great for those who like the high-end Black Diamond. The Diamond Relic parallels do pay a tribute to the original Black Diamond parallels with the Ruby and Emerald parallels. The Ruby and Emeralds are actually, they refer to, not like the card like before, they actually refer to the diamond inside the card. So it is really cool, which we both love that tribute. And there is, although, some notable cons with the product. For those who haven't seen, we did post it up on Twitter, but some pretty unfortunate quality control issues. I know with some of the auto patch cards, the front facing portion of the card would actually detach from the middle portion where the patch is actually embedded in the card. So yeah, I've seen that happen quite a few times, especially with a McDavid patch auto out of 5, I believe. So quite an unfortunate turn of events there with the quality control. So that is really unfortunate. I'm not sure how that happens. I've never seen that happen before. So, and it's happened more than once with Black Diamond. So hopefully Upper Deck can figure that out and definitely get some nice replacements for those collectors if they can't repair the card. So we'll see how that shakes up there. But another notable product that just released this past week, and not a lot of people know that the actual release happened, kind of caught a lot of people off guard, is the 2021 President's Choice Game Use Stick Rack, which was part of the President's Choice Game Use product that we interviewed Dr. Brian Price about in the last few episodes. The stick rack cards that were supposed to be in his game use product, actually, Dr. Price decided to kind of pull those back and kind of released a stick memorabilia card product only. And so he called it Stick Rack. It is actually a tribute to one of his older sets from in the game. So kind of a, nice play on words there. And yeah, it was a great box product, and it's meant to compete with products like Leaf Lumber Kings. So yeah, it's a really good product. The cards look great from what I've seen. It's a nice mix of modern and vintage. So for those who like that kind of a mix with player selection, this product is definitely for you. And for me, there is actually a Jonas Enroth stick card in there. So it's number out of 5. So I'm definitely looking to pick that up. I haven't seen one yet. I only saw one in the preview images of the product. So I know it's out there somewhere, but hoping I'll get it. Like, that is just an awesome card from a really cool set. And I'm glad it's out there for me to chase. So I'm hoping I can pick it up at some point. And that kind of ends it for the new products. But we do have, as part of our main topic today, all about Beckett. And Eric actually received a mail day from Beckett, and he got some nice graded cards back. So Eric, just if you want to go through your graded card submission and those results, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of you guys might remember, I don't remember exactly which episode it was, but sometime back in the fall, we talked about how I had sent in some cards for grading through, I say my local card shop. It's in Indianapolis, which is, I don't know, an hour and 45 minutes away. So local card shop, but I mean, it's still a trek. So I very rarely get down there. But I was heading that way one time in the fall and decided to take a few cards to send as part of their monthly group submission. And I think at the time, Beckett's estimate for the turnaround time was 8 to 10 weeks. And well, I just got them back a couple weeks ago. So obviously those turnaround times weren't even accurate back in the fall. And obviously nowadays it's not accurate at all. So yeah, I was kind of starting to get a little frustrating, month after month after month of, what's going on with these. Like I said, the original turnaround time, I kind of thought it would be late last year, maybe around Christmas or New Year's. And then, obviously here we are, and they just showed up at the beginning of April. So, oh well, but certainly glad to have them back finally at this point. So there were 6 total cards that I submitted. And again, if you guys remember that episode, you might remember what the cards are. But for those that are new listeners or don't recall that episode, I'll go through each one at a time. So the first one, which is really the only one that I'm like really disappointed in, which is unfortunate because it's the best card out of the group, is a 2015-16 Upper Deck Young Guns of Connor McDavid, which unfortunately got an 8.5 grade. And what's kind of interesting is 3 of the subgrades, being centering, edges, and surface, got 9.5. So, obviously those components of the card were really strong, but then they gave the corners an 8, which, obviously is really frustrating, especially given that looking at the card now after it's been graded, I can tell that one of the corners was damaged at some point after I dropped it off at the card shop. So I'm assuming that that was Beckett's doing because they were already packed up when I gave them to the LCS. So I don't think it was their doing. I think it was the grader must have dropped the card or something because there's a pretty noticeable ding on one of the corners. So that's pretty upsetting, and I'll probably contact Beckett about that. But yeah, because I mean, even if it got an 8.5 on the corners, it would have gotten a 9 grade overall. So definitely unfortunate about that one, but oh well, not the end of the world. Then moving forward into the ones that were kind of expected grades, I would say. First one being an Austin Matthews 16-17 Upper Deck Young Gun, which got a grade of 9 with 3 subgrades of 9.5, and then edges got 8.5. And I was telling Aaron beforehand, I'm not super sure why the edges got an 8.5. There's one small area on the back where I can kind of see that they would dock it, but I don't know if I would have gone as low as an 8.5 for that subgrade. So a little frustrating there as well, but can't complain too much. I kind of figured that at least one of the Matthews Young Guns that I submitted would get a 9 grade. So not the end of the world, because the other 2 that I submitted both got grades of 9.5, which I was obviously very happy with. And both of those 9.5s had 9.5 subgrades on centering, edges, and surface, and then a subgrade of 9 for the corners on each of those. So out of those 3 Matthews Young Guns, I kind of figured that I would get at least 1 9 and 1 9.5. And then the third one, who knows, either a 9 or a 9.5. So to get 2 9.5s, I was certainly happy with that. And then the 2 cards that I was expecting to do pretty well did do pretty well. First one being a 2018-19 Upper Deck Ice Premier's rookie, numbered out of 99, of Carter Hart, which had a true gem 9.5, meaning that all 4 of the subgrades were 9.5, which is a nice little added touch there. I would say for this card, that was probably like the basement, the floor for the grade, so to speak. I thought there was maybe a chance that it could get a 10, but I would have been really surprised if it got less than a 9.5. So getting the quad 9.5 grade was certainly really nice, and happy about that. And then finally, this one obviously is not a big dollar card by any means, but I just wanted to grade it for my personal collection and just see, what kind of grade I could get on it. And again, this was one where I said, maybe there is a chance I could get a 10 on this. Unfortunately did not happen, but still cannot complain about the grade whatsoever, with it being a quad 9.5 gem mint 2015-16 Young Gun of Jacob Slavin for my Slavin collection. So
I like that one.
Yeah, I do too. It was obviously kind of the fun card of the submission, so to speak. I've got, I don't know exactly how many, but roughly 50 Slavin Young Guns. So
that's crazy.
When I was going through getting ready to do the submission, I just looked through all of them, like literally every single copy, and picked out which one I thought was the strongest copy. So, like I said, I thought there was a chance it could have gotten a 10, but getting a quad 9.5, I certainly cannot complain about that at all. So something different for my Slavin collection for sure. This is the only graded card I have in my Slavin collection. So cool that, just to get a quad 9.5, but also for it to have been one that I submitted myself. And I know we had talked about this a couple weeks ago when I got the cards back, but I'm pretty sure there's only like maybe 3 or 4 Slavin Young Guns graded. So
I think we went through it like off camera. I think we did. Yeah, there's not too much. Like obviously because, he's not, an Austin Matthews, a Connor McDavid, right? So the demand for grading his cards aren't there, but it's still kind of cool to have maybe one of three copies that graded that high or graded, at all. So that's pretty awesome. And what's like your grading process like, Eric? Like when dealing with, you said you had 50 cards. Like, do you just pick up 50 cards to kind of eyeball it, or do you have one of those like magnifying glasses to kind of look at the cards? Or does your experience in grading kind of trust yourself on that, or do you kind of use other methods?
No, just purely eyeballing it.
Eyeball it?
Yeah, I mean,
Respect that.
a lot of the copies that I have, not that I would consider them like damaged or anything, but just with the 1516 Young Gun design with the gray in the bottom corners,
Yeah, they're pretty
um, those
delicate.
you can notice some damage on those, and even on the Slaven, just kind of how the picture is, on the front, and then even on the design on the back. If there's any wear on any of the corners or the edges, you'll see it. So I would consider the 1516 Young Guns to be a little bit easier to just kind of eyeball, just because, you can immediately see, oh, that corner has a little bit of a ding on it. So I would say for probably, I don't know, at least 40 of the cards that I have, that there was something quickly noticeable about it where I was like, no, like I'm not grading that one. And I knew that I was only going to grade one. I wasn't going to, even though I like having the card, I'm not just going to waste all kinds of money grading a bunch of Slaven cards because, raw, that card is whatever, like $2 or something. So it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money grading his stuff. And fortunately, I did submit this stuff when I did, because nowadays to get these cards graded, I think would be like 150 or 175 a piece. Whereas for
That's
these,
crazy.
yeah, it's insane. Whereas for these 6 cards, they were $30 each. So, or wait, 35. Yeah, I think 35. So it was a little over $200 all in for those 6 cards.
That's
So
pretty good.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And obviously getting the strong grades on two of the Matthews Young Guns and the Carter Hart, certainly, more than pays for that price. So it was certainly a worthwhile investment for sure. But yeah, I mean, getting back to your question, I would say at the end of, looking through, 50 some cards, I would say there were maybe two or three that were really in contention to be the one, and then kind of just really scoured over each of those copies. And for whatever reason, I don't remember at this point, I mean, it's been whatever, 7 months ago or something about those other two or three copies stood out to me as saying, no, like this is not a perfect card, whereas this one, I didn't see anything wrong with it. So that's the one I went with. And obviously I think the grade speaks for itself, and definitely happy with that. So overall, I would say, pretty content with the submission. Definitely disappointed about the McDavid, especially given that, I'm pretty sure that they damaged the card. If the card was in this condition when I had it raw, I would not have sent it in for grading. So disappointing there, but the other 5 cards I'm pretty happy with for sure. So as far as, I'm sure you guys might be saying, oh, like, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to sell them? Are you trade them, keep them? Obviously the Slaven's not going anywhere. Not that there'd be any demand for it anyway, but
You'd be surprised right now. I'm sure there's people trying to put young gun sets together, 9 or 9.5 and above. So you might be surprised.
true,
I saw
true.
like an Enroth young gun. I texted you when I saw it sell. It sold for about like 40, $50 Canadian because it graded a PSA 10. So I mean, like things like that are just crazy to me. But I mean, you never know who's building what kind of set. So especially in the graded card market now, people want those graded cards for their sets. So I mean, hey, you never know.
That's
But
true.
I hear you.
Especially being 1516, if someone wanted
Yeah, that's true.
a master set of series 1 and 2, who knows? But yeah, it's not going anywhere. I mean, you could offer me $100 for it and I'd say no. So yeah, so that one's definitely not going anywhere ever. And then the other 5 cards, I would say, are all kind of those like longer term investment cards for me. The Carter Hart obviously isn't going anywhere anytime soon, just because he's had a really rough season. I picked the card up, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I picked it up just saying, this is a really good card of a guy that has a lot of promise. So I'm just going to grab it. I got it in a trade for a pretty good, pretty good trade, I would say. I didn't have to give up a whole lot for it. And, certainly happy to get that one graded and to get a strong grade on it. Aaron and I were talking about before the show, but we both feel that Carter Hart has, pretty much unlimited potential in terms of the goalie position. He could certainly win a Vezina trophy. And if he's on a team that has any significant success in the postseason, if he was able to win a Stanley Cup or win a Conn Smythe or something, his value would obviously skyrocket. So that's kind of my intention for that card, is just hang on to it and see what he can do in his career. And if it ever makes sense to move it, great. And, until that point, I'm perfectly content just hanging on to it. The Matthews cards are kind of interesting. Obviously, he's having just a spectacular season this year. So, my original intention with those was kind of to hang on to him for a long time. But at this point, it seems like he'll probably win the Rocket Richard Trophy this year. And it seems like the Leafs are in a very good position to have postseason success. I think a lot of people would say it would probably be a disappointing season for them if they didn't get to the Final Four this year, just based on how the playoff bracket is kind of working out this year, having that interdivision playoff setting, for the first couple rounds. So I think those were originally cards that I planned on having for a while, but just based on the individual success that he's having and then potentially the team success that they'll have this spring and summer, those might be cards that I move over the next few months. We'll just have to see. And then the McDavid probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I don't really feel the need to move it for really any reason. So I do have a raw copy of the McDavid that I pulled myself back in 2015, right after the product came out. So that's really my PC copy. And this one was kind of just an investment copy, so to speak. But, so I might keep it. I might sell it way down the road, after he retires or something, but not in any
Kind of
rush.
like a Crosby scenario where,
Exactly.
he's had his success, but then we see kind of later in his career, he's having, as far as his cards go, an increased kind of boom.
Exactly.
Where if you sold a Crosby Young Gun back when he won his first cup, for example, it might have seemed like a great investment at the time, but really his real value is coming much later down the road.
Right.
So I think it could be kind of like a Crosby scenario, just because he is that generational talent.
Exactly. Once he kind of achieves that like legend status, McDavid obviously nowadays has the superstar status, but he doesn't. I would say that most people probably wouldn't consider him to be a legend of the game at this point.
Not yet, but I think he's a lock though.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think assuming he stays healthy and
Right.
has the career that people expect him to kind of have, I think he'll definitely get to that level. But I think whatever it's been, 5 or 6 years, I think it's just a little bit too early to really consider him a legend of the game. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Like you said, similar to the Crosby Young Gun, is just hold on to it for a long time, with the hopes that eventually he'll be in the Hall of Fame and his value will go up even more from where it is right now, which is kind of hard to even think about. But at the end of the day, I got this card, trying to think, maybe spring of 2018, I believe, for, I want to say, like $200 or something. So I got it for next to nothing. Obviously nowadays a McDavid Young Gun raw even is like $1,000 or 1,100 or 1,200 or something like that. So obviously I got it for next to nothing compared to what it's worth now. So even though it's a disappointing grade, it still is a McDavid Young Gun. So the value is there. So yeah, just wanted to give you guys that update. Obviously it's been a long time coming, but glad to have them back in hand for sure. And of course, speaking of Beckett, we wanted to go into a little bit of some fairly notable news in the hobby that happened this past week. So Aaron, do you want to just share a little bit about that news?
Yeah, no doubt. Huge news in the hobby. For some, it might seem kind of simple or something that should have been done a long time ago or was inevitable. But for those who haven't heard, Upper Deck, and this is a quote right from their Upper Deck Assist Twitter account on April 15th, Upper Deck will be phasing out Beckett / book value aspect of evaluating card values. Instead, we will be focusing on secondary market values to determine a card's worth. So pretty much what that means is what they were doing before is they were going by the Beckett value of cards or the book, or sometimes it's called the BV value. What that meant is that if you had a card that you thought or that you've seen sold for say $100, you would get the book value of that. So in some cases, because obviously a book, any sort of printing publication, it's going to be a little bit late. So you might have got like 40 or $50, or sometimes even lower than that before the value had exploded. So Upper Deck has realized this for a while. And so, of course, during the pandemic, we've seen values just spike all over the map. So if you were to get any sort of replacement for this type of player, unfortunately, going by book value, it would value that card a lot lower than what it actually is. So Upper Deck kind of getting with the times a little bit here and going with the actual secondary market value of this card is going to help immensely with I'm not saying you're always going to like your replacements, but at the very least, you could sit there and say, hey, you know what? At least, money wise, that was fair. And so, if you have a replacement for a Crosby autograph, for example, maybe similar guys from the set have sold for certain prices on eBay and say the Crosby won't get made for whatever reason. And so you need a replacement. Upper Deck will fairly compensate you for that based on the value of what the Crosby would have been worth versus, say, a lower book value or something like that. So, although for a lot of replacements, you would really like the card that you asked for, but in some cases that obviously is not the case. So it's good to see that, again, at the very least, you're getting compensated on a financial aspect fairly. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so definitely some huge knowledge there. As far as Beckett goes, I think it's, for those people who've been in the hobby for a long time, Beckett hasn't been really all that accurate in terms of their pricing, in terms of their book value for those key cards in, honestly, Eric, you wrote down here in the notes, probably around 15 years. And that's probably about right. Back in, 05, 06, 06, 07, people were still taking the Beckett values to heart. And then since then, we kind of have evolved, and we're seeing prices, especially with cards making their way from group breaks, to eBay very quickly. We're seeing cards just have crazy value. And as far as redemptions go, as a collector, you would like, fair value for your card. So it's nice to see that Upper Deck is doing that. And I'm not saying that Beckett will be, completely irrelevant in the hobby. I know there's going to be some sellers that still stick to that book value in terms of like card shows and stuff and things like that. But as far as Upper Deck is concerned, they're kind of moving away from that, which I think it was inevitable, but it is really good to see, especially in a market where cards can climb seemingly overnight. So if you have a redemption of a guy, it's nice to see that you're going to get compensated very accurately, and that's a very good thing for, the average collector. So very good to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I would say, generally speaking, from what I've seen over the years, especially over the last few years, I would say that Upper Deck has been pretty fair in their replacements anyway. I mean, there certainly are cases where
You usually hear the bad cases.
yeah, you don't see it too often, but I have seen it where someone gets a replacement and it's like, okay, like they were clearly just going off of Beckett value for this
Right.
because this isn't even close. But, and that's the thing, like we're saying, Beckett just it's not able to, keep up with the changing markets, and really hasn't been able to do that for the last 15 years since the hobby really transitioned to being primarily online. There's just no way of constantly keeping up with pricing and, sales and things like that. There just isn't a way to do that. So, I think a lot of people would probably say that Beckett could do a better job of that anyway. But I think at this point it's kind of just too late, and the majority of people in the hobby just don't take Beckett pricing seriously anymore. I used to have a Beckett subscription, but I haven't priced cards with Beckett in probably at least 10 or 12 years, just because it's just not accurate. I mean, you have, look at a common jersey card, a rookie materials from Upper Deck. No one's going to pay $8 for a photo shoot jersey of Joe Schmo. Like, it just isn't worth that much money. So,
Or Jonas Hedroth.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So, no, I'm just kidding. But, there's cases like that where a book value is grossly overinflated for a certain card. Whereas then you look at another card that, for whatever reason, maybe the player has gotten, really improved over the last few years or whatever it might be. And the book value of that card didn't really change, and so maybe you have a young gun of, whoever that for the longest time wasn't worth all that much and the book value is $10 or something. But now over the last few years, that guy has really risen to prominence and is a really good player. And actually that card sells for 25 or 30 bucks. Well, but the Beckett value is still 10 bucks. So, that's kind of where, and that's an extreme case, but I mean, there were cases like that. I mean, I think there was even news, I don't remember when it was, maybe back in the fall or something, where Beckett updated the value of the Gretzky rookie cards for the first time in years. And it's like, why? I mean, I understand you don't have time to update the price of literally every single card that's ever been made, because that's just not possible. There's too much out there. But for those iconic, huge cards, you would think that, that's something that could be updated pretty much every month, but whatever. So, I think switching to using true market value that's based on actual completed sales of cards just makes sense. At the end of the day, a card is worth what it's worth. And what determines value is what someone pays for it, or what someone gives up monetarily for the card. So, at the end of the day, that is really the only accurate way to determine the value of a card. So, like
Not through a
Aaron's
formula.
right. Yeah. There's no, well, this is what it should be worth based on, the price of a box, and, how many there are and how rare they
Or
are.
the Beckett, like the parallel multiplier.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, and I still see people on Facebook that, say, oh, what's the multiplier for a clear cut or like a high gloss young gun? And it's like, okay, let's take a look at a common no name young gun that normally sells for $1. The high gloss young gun, you might be able to get 50, 60 bucks, 75 bucks, maybe 100 bucks. Who knows? But you're getting a pretty significant multiplier on a no-name player. Whereas if you look at, McDavid and his young gun is $1,000, is a McDavid young gun high gloss a $100,000 card? No. So like, there's just no way of just blanket statement having a multiplier for just a general, type of parallel or insert or what, whatever it might be. That's just not how it works. There's different values for every type of card. And like you said, Aaron, the multipliers, that might be how things worked, 15, 20, 30 years ago, but it just isn't accurate anymore. So, like you were saying, I think it's really encouraging to see Upper Deck making that change. I'm sure this is something that they have been aware of and have been thinking about for a while, but to see them actually pull the trigger on it and say, no, like, we're switching, we are using accurate sale values, instead of just what some third party claims the card should theoretically be worth. So, like you said, it's encouraging to see them kind of being with the times. I'm sure that a lot of people will be happy with this change. Like you said, feeling like you are truly getting a fair value for your replacement. And another kind of thing that I wanted to talk about with this too is a lot, or at least part of the time, some of these redemptions that are needing to be replaced are one of ones, or numbered out of 5, numbered out of 10. There's no book value for those cards because of the scarcity. So how can Upper Deck accurately and fairly replace a card using Beckett value for something that doesn't have a Beckett value? You can't do it. So, I think that's kind of where people were seeing some of those disappointing replacement values, was instances like that where there's no book value. So Upper Deck was kind of just guessing on a book value and then going from there. And you might say, okay, would I rather have a Crosby one of one autograph, or, insert whatever replacement here, just some random Crosby autograph that isn't numbered or is numbered out of 50 or whatever, and then something else. Well, yeah, you're still getting a Crosby autograph and something else, but those don't compare to a Crosby one of one autograph. So, I think instances like that, you're really going to start to see that problem solved by this switch. So yeah, overall, I think it's really good news for the hobby. As soon as I heard about it, my first impression was just like, whoa, like they're doing this. But my second thought was, yeah, like, that's not only is this a big decision, but it's also the right decision. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really too much more to say about that topic. I think while it is big news, and certainly worth talking about, there really isn't a whole lot to unpack there. So more just kind of wanted to make you guys aware of that in case you hadn't heard about it, and also share our thoughts about it. And if you guys have thoughts about it, if you don't think it was a good move, feel free to let us know, and we'll certainly we'll interact with you. I don't think we'll come to agree with you on that, but no one's ever going to agree about everything in the hobby. And there are certainly collectors. I feel like it's more kind of the old timers that have been around, for 30, 40, 50 years in the hobby that, are just totally glued to Beckett and, oh, online, like, well, whatever, that's manipulated, whatever. Okay, like I know that there are a lot of people out there like that still, but I think most people would kind of be on the same page with this one. But yeah, I think that's really going to do it. Obviously, this is a little bit shorter of an episode. We kind of just wanted to get something out there. We had plans for an episode in the meantime, but that didn't end up working out and kind of got delayed. So still hoping to have that episode in the near future. Hopefully it's the next episode, but might not be. We'll just kind of see what happens. But obviously, as we said at the top of the show, it's kind of been a little bit of a wait since our last episode. So wanted to make sure we were getting something out there for you guys to listen to. So yeah, like I said, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. With that, please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center ICC. And with that, we've said this before, but even though we might not have episodes super frequently, we are constantly posting stuff, primarily on Instagram and Twitter. So even if it's just a cool card that we see, or someone has a question and we end up starting a conversation with them, or whatever it might be, we encourage you guys to go on, especially Instagram and Twitter, like I said, just to be seeing content more frequently than just the episodes. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.